Gosh, I'm so used to doing these on Saturday that I forgot today was Sunday. This is our April Spine of the Month book chat. Terah Shelton Harris is our guest, and we're talking about Where the Wildflowers Grow. Look at how gorgeous this book is. It is stunning. Come on in, come on in. Hello. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday. For some reason, I don't know, I like Sundays a little bit better than Saturdays because people are so busy on Saturdays, but Sundays is nice to have our book chats. Hope I can stop all these notifications coming in. I thought I stopped them. Hi, Billy. Glorious read is correct. It is a glorious read. I need to still go back and read her second book. Oh, Terah is here. Hold on a second. Let me make sure I can get her in here. I can't believe it's May. I'm going to be announcing our summer reading series soon, so stay tuned. Happy Sunday. Hello.
Hey,
How are you?
I am
I am
doing
doing
very
very
well. How
well.
are you?
I'm doing well on this Sunday. Am I saying your first name right? It's Terah, right?
It's Tara. That's
Okay, I
right.
thought so. I'm like looking at it. I'm like, did I say that right? Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. I've been watching these for years, so it is. I am so honored to be on here.
You know what I said? First of all, you've been putting out these gorgeous books, and people
Thank
talk
you.
so much about them. And then when this one landed on my radar, I was like, okay, it's time. It's the perfect time to have you on and talk
Thank
about all
you.
the things. So I'm gonna do a quick intro, but I always like the author to tell our audience a little bit about themselves, and then we'll just dive right in. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Sure.
Hello, you guys. Thank you for joining. This is our April Spine of the Month book chat. Our book was Where the Wildflowers Grow by Terah Shelton Harris. I am Jamise Harper. You can also go find me on Spines and Vines. And we talk every month to our author for the featured book that we select. And so we like to welcome to Diverse Spines for the first time, Terah
Woo.
Shelton Harris.
Hi,
Thank
hi,
you
hi.
for joining us. So, yeah,
Thank
jump
you.
right in and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a former librarian, now turned writer, who I like to say write upmarket fiction with bittersweet endings because
Hmm.
those people who have read my books know that my books have these bittersweet endings. And I kind of walked backwards into writing books. I worked as a librarian for 18 years and kind of thought that I was, librarianship is a career that they say you can die in your chair. And so I
Hmm.
really thought that I was going to do that until I wrote One Summer in Savannah, which I call my COVID book. And that book
Yes.
just kind of took off, in ways that I had prayed and hoped for, but not that I expected that soon. And so I wrote that, and then long after we're gone, and made the very difficult decision to leave librarianship and write books, full time.
That is an amazing story.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love it so much, especially because you're a librarian. That's like makes it even more sweeter. But I want to know, let's before we jump into this book, let's talk about the COVID book and
Mhm.
the attention that One Summer in Savannah got and how people just rallied behind this book and really
Yeah.
loved it so much. What
Yeah.
do you think made people, just grow, like really love this book?
Yeah, I think it's because it was unlike anything people had ever read before. One of my jobs as a librarian was collection development. So my job was to purchase all the adult print and digital material for my library system, which was three branches in the bookmobile. So I spent a lot of time researching authors, reading reviews, reading a lot of books. And one of the things that my patrons would always tell me, it was like they love their tried and true authors, those authors that continuously put out great book after great book. But they were also really hungry for new and unique stories. And
Hmm.
so I kind of tucked that in the back of my mind. And I think I had that in mind when I set out to write my books. And that now has become somewhat of a niche for me is you're going to learn something in my books. And it's going to be a circumstance or a condition that has happened to people, is happening to people every day, that either we don't know enough about and we don't talk enough about. And that book, first one, was One Summer in Savannah. You know, it tells the story of a woman who conceived a child following a sexual assault and has a very difficult decision to make whether or not to allow her attacker's family into her daughter's life. And I don't think people have ever read a book about that particular
Yes.
topic, you know,
Uh-huh.
sexual assault and having and conception after a sexual assault. And I think that kind of just grabbed people. And then we kind of wrapped it in the theme of forgiveness. And I think people just didn't understand and did not realize that, oh, wow, this is happening to people. And it just kind of sat them down. And I think that is what really set it apart, because even when I was doing comps, you know, as you know, we have to have comps for our book. What is your book like?
Yes.
I couldn't find, I mean, I literally worked as a collection development librarian for 18 years. I could not find one book that really talked about what this book was talking about. I found some books that kind of touched on it, but nothing that really just put it as forefront. And I think that's what made it really stand out.
You know what? I think the thing that you said that's so profound is that it made people sit down and pay attention to it, right?
Yeah,
It's like they
yeah,
had not seen anything like it before.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, you're talking about, and it's a real life thing.
Yes, yes, it
Yeah.
is. Yes, it
And
is.
so now go on to Long After We're Gone.
Yes,
You come up, so you had all this spark and all these fanfare about One Summer in Savannah, and here comes your sophomore novel.
yes.
And so were you trepidatious about it? You know, you had to live up to the hype. Talk about that.
Absolutely. I suffer from imposter syndrome. Anybody that
Don't
talked
we
that had a
all?
conversation with me knows I have imposter syndrome so bad. And then when I was writing that and finishing that book, when words start to get around about One Summer in Savannah, and it just really just paralyzed me, because I
Hmm.
thought, will I ever be able to hold up to what One Summer in Savannah? It hadn't even came out yet. Like, could I hold this? You know, hold this? And it was so much pressure. But again, it was one of those really, really important stories that needed to be told. So I knew I had to kind of push through it, you know, to get this story out in the world, because that story is based on two brothers in North Carolina who went to jail for 8 years fighting to save their ancestral home and land. And so I thought, oh, such an important story. I just have to get it
Yes,
right. And so, I mean, that book, I mean, Target, I know we are feeling very indifferent about Target at the
we
moment,
are,
but
but still,
Target had never named an author of the year, and they named the author of the year after that book.
and
And
so we're
so
claiming that because regardless of what we're feeling,
that's
how
right.
we're feeling about them right now, that's a big deal.
It was a big deal. And it was unfortunate for me that I stopped talking about it, because, you know, Target had been really great and influential in helping me get my books in front of people.
Hmm.
And it was unfortunate that happened, but, you know, I'm still extremely so proud of that book. It's one of my favorites. If I had to pick one, it's definitely one of my favorites.
You just picked a favorite.
I did pick a favorite just because, you know why? It was the hardest one for me to write.
Okay.
Four points of view, and then this overarching story. It was, to this day, it is the hardest book that I will probably ever write.
Really? Okay, so that's
Yes.
the one I have not read. So, but every
Mm.
time someone talks about this book, they say, someone just said it in the comments, it tore me up. Oh my gosh, it's my favorite. But and I'm like, okay, here I go again on another ride. So you are always giving us these heartfelt, real life conditions, but there is some hope,
Hmm.
and the characters are very actualized. They're so real. And
Yeah.
so, can you talk a little bit about that? And then we're going to dive into your new book.
Yeah, I never, after reading so many books, I don't want my characters to be caricatures or stereotypes. I want them to feel real, and,
Hmm.
and that's what I try to do. I try to, because these stories are based on real people, I really do try to make them humanize them.
Yeah.
And I'm an empath, and I think a lot of that has to do with how I portray characters in books. And so I try to just make them human. I want them to feel like this is your next door neighbor, or this is your brother, this is your sister, this is your mother. I want them to
Yeah.
feel real. And so I try to infuse that. My books are not literary, they're more upmarket fiction. It kind of blends that line. So there's a plot in my books.
Hmm.
But none of my books are races to the end. You are meant to fall in with these characters. You are meant to get to know them.
Hmm.
Yes, there's a plot that's pulling you through, so you want to find out the resolution of whatever's happening, but it's really my stories are really character based. And so that's important to me, of making sure I get these characters right. So the resolution will have this big payoff.
And I think too, when you, God, I love this conversation. I think too, the one thing that you're talking about is they are human. You're making them human, which is why, one summer in Savannah, you're bringing up a topic that no one wants to talk about or
Right.
people don't know anything about, but then may or may not 6 degrees of separation know someone in that situation.
That's
And then
right.
it's
That's right.
uncomfortable. It makes people uncomfortable. And
Yes, it
so,
does.
yeah. And so, but I think that's why people are so they love it so much, love your books, is
Yes.
because they are human. They see the characters, they see them in their everyday walks of life.
That's right. That's right. And that was Lee in Where the Wildflowers Grow. I am receiving so many messages from people who feel so seen, who feel like they're still dealing and grappling with grief and what that means, and still holding on to something and need that
Hmm.
permission. And my goodness, I didn't think that I would write another, or I wasn't sure I would ever write another book, that people would really feel and fall in love with this character and see themselves. And after One Summer in Savannah, and now it's like this book is just, people are just seeing themselves in it.
I mean, in a major way. And
Yes.
I mean, you're 3 for 3, and now people.
Oh,
I
the
mean,
pressure, the pressure.
so let's talk about Where the Wildflowers Go. First of all, before I even ask you where the inspiration came from, can we talk about this cover?
Can we? Can we? I love, shout out to my publisher. They just have always done an amazing job with my covers, but this
I
one,
mean,
they knocked it out. They knocked it out.
I got this book box, right? And I am just, I've never, because I talk about books and post books. I'm not really creative
Yeah.
as far as like content creating and videoing. And I
Yeah.
said, oh, there's no way I'm not going to film this. It may not be the greatest, but I am filming this box because it was the
Sure.
presentation. I
Yeah.
mean, the bookmark. I did just,
Yeah. They knocked it out. They knocked it
it's
out. They did an amazing
gorgeous.
job. They
And
did
I
an
think when
amazing
I
job.
picked it up, I mean,
Yeah.
I just love it so
And
much.
I have to say this, that print run is at this very end. So I've been telling people, if like they want that paperback with those special edges, they better get it, because that print run, that's how many we've sold. They've sold just about through all that print run. And I'm like, really? Already sold through it. It's such a beautiful book. So I'm telling people now there'll still be a paperback version of it, but
Yes.
without those edges.
Okay, so I will make sure when I post this conversation that I will let people know that that print run is
Yes.
almost gone. If you want it with the sprayed edges, you better get it
They better get it.
now. Okay,
Yes.
so let's dive right in.
Okay.
Tell me, what was the inspiration? What sparked your first thought of Lee?
So my books start with the themes first.
Hmm.
So when I finish a book, I always ask myself, is there more meat on this bone of the theme that I wrote about previous? And so I looked at One Summer in Savannah and Long After We're Gone and recognized that grief was not the main theme of neither one of these books,
Hmm.
but it was the secondary theme of both of these books. And I thought, wow, okay, grief has been here twice. So it's like, okay, Tara, it's because I always challenge myself with every book that I write. It's like, okay, Tara, it's time to write about grief. And so I was like, okay, grief is going to be the theme of this book. So I have my theme, nothing else, until I met a grief therapist and
Mm.
at a book festival, and I was like, I'm going to write a book about grief. And he was like, girl, do you know how complicated grief is? You know how many
Yeah.
different layers of grief there is? And so through her inspiration, we were able to narrow down like the type of grief that Lee was going to be suffering from.
Hmm.
And so it was survivor's guilt and the
Yeah.
complex grief. Complex grief is grief of missing someone who has hurt you, but like that type of grief where you love them, but they hurt you at the same time. So it's hard
Hmm.
to grieve for them. And so I thought, okay, so there we go. We have a theme. We have the specific types of grief. So we don't have a character yet, because I am character driven. And so I like to tell people that my stories come to me. I don't go to them. And
Mm.
so I waited for that inspiration, and it came in the form of an article about a 17-year-old girl who lives in Colorado who was a non-entity, a person who does not exist. And I thought, how does a person not exist in
Crazy.
today's world? And so she was born off the grid, and her birth was never reported. And when your birth is never reported, you have 10 days to do that. If your birth is never reported, you are invisible in the eyes of the government. And I thought, how is this possible? How does this happen? But then I started thinking more about, okay, so I have a character who was born off the grid, and who does not exist. And so it speaks to the invisibility of like grief. And so I
Mm-hmm.
thought, okay, here we go. We have this character. She is going to be this non-entity person. Plus, I love raising awareness. I want people to feel like they've learned something after reading my
Right.
book. Not be preachy, but just learn something. And
Yeah.
then I read another article about a man named Bobby Love, who was an escaped convicted armed robber. And he had served so many years in prison and escaped and lived the next 30 years of his life as an upstanding citizen. He got married. He had two children, became a deacon in his church. All the while, he was wanted. And I
Yeah.
thought, how do you live that long of your life knowing that at any moment, it could be
Yes.
different? But he chose to heal himself and to live as an upstanding citizen for the rest of his life. And so Lee is a composite of those two stories
Mm-hmm.
along with the grief. And so that kind of helped me narrow down who this person was and what she was going to be dealing with throughout this book.
Yeah, and she's dealing with a lot. I like the way that
Yes.
the two stories came
Yeah.
together. Um, Talk a little about your approach, your craft in writing. So, are you, put a guideline together, outline, and from the first book to now the third book, how have you evolved in your writing? What has changed, or what, talk about that.
Nothing has changed in terms of four books, because I'm finished with my fourth book. Nothing has changed.
You're finished with the fourth book.
I am finished with the fourth book. It should be out February. I mean, not February, fall of 2027.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. And so nothing has changed about my process.
Okay.
I am a pantser.
Mm,
I make it up as I go along. But
yeah.
I do this. I know the ends of my books first, and that's what I write first. And so people have a really hard time understanding, especially the way my books end, that's what I often write first. I have to know how it ends in order to begin it. So, yeah,
Really? Well, we're not doing any spoilers because we
no
want people, if you
spoilers.
haven't read any of these
No
books,
spoilers.
you can find
Sorry.
them in our bookshop. I'm going to pin it. So, yeah, you start with the end first.
I,
Okay.
I start with the end first, and then I write the beginning. And then everything else in there is just kind of pieced together. So, because my characters speak to me, they tell
Hmm.
me conversations, they tell me what's happening. So everything else is kind of pieced together. But that's been my process since I started. I handwrite my books. I don't have my notebook in front of me right now, but I write all my books longhand. And so I'll write a couple of pages and then type it up as I go.
Wow. That's impressive. I
It's
mean,
a lot of extra work and it's very chaotic, but it works for me.
what does it do for you though? Talk about, because I think it's something about putting pen to paper, but what does it do for you as far as in your writing process?
It gets rid of all the distractions for me.
Mm.
I mean, I am old school. I still write with a pencil. I mean, I write with black wing pencils and a piece of paper, I mean, and an old notebook. It just opens it up for me. I've tried to type on a computer and it doesn't flow. The characters don't speak to me that way. But when I'm just lost in my own head and just writing, I need somebody to explain the connection of pen to paper and what that does and how the brain is connected, because it just works for me. I still write out lists, to-do lists. Everything has
I
to
do
be
that.
like written out. It works better that way. Yes, we have our
Yeah.
phones and we have
Hmm.
we have our list apps and stuff that we can write. I just never do use
Yeah,
those.
I definitely
It
write
just
mine down.
I just have to write everything down. And so it just opens it up for me. And then that way I can write anywhere. I worked as a librarian when I wrote my first two books. And so I would write at stoplights. I would write in my lunch break in the car. I could write anywhere. And so I love that process of just being able to write anywhere.
So you write and then you type it all up and then you submit it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I will handwrite a couple of pages and then type it up. And then that's kind of where I start my editing process, is
Okay.
as I'm typing it up. And then I send everything in all together.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I want to know about your publishing journey because you were a librarian. What made you say, okay, I'm going to write this book? And then what's the process that you went through to, get an agent, land with source books? How did that happen?
So One Summer in Savannah is inspired by a dear friend of mine. So that's her story. She
Oh, wow.
conceived a child following a sexual assault. And when I told her that I wanted to write a book about forgiveness, she was like, I have a story for you. And that's where the essence of One Summer in Savannah came from. And so I knew I needed to get it right. I had wrote a book before that will never get published, that lives on my laptop. And I tried that process before, and I was afraid to try to write, to try again, because
Hmm.
rejection in publishing is a very real thing, and
Yeah.
it's hard, and you have to have very thick skin. And I knew that if I was going to give this another shot, that it needed to be the right story. And I felt like this was the right story. And so I went home because I started writing that book in Paris, February of 2020. I remember that. I was in Paris whenever the world started shutting down for COVID.
Hmm.
And that's literally when I started writing that book. And March of 2020, my library closed for 3.5 months. So we all came home. We were still working from home, but I had so much more time to write. And I wrote this book, One Summer in Savannah, through 2020, the end of 2020, and spent the entire 2021 trying to get an agent for it, and got and received the best rejection letters a person could ever receive.
Yeah.
Oh, this book, I can't wait to see this book on the shelf. And this book will go toe to toe. And I'm thinking, why are you
Why aren't you
not
picking it up?
representing it?
Right.
Like, what do you mean? I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
understand publishing. And finally, my then editor, Erin, had opened up her submissions to unagented writers. And so I thought, okay, well, this is when we loved Twitter and we were so active on Twitter.
Yes.
And so she posted that on Twitter, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try my shot at this. And it was Thanksgiving of 2021. And I was telling my niece, I said, I'm going to have to shelve another book because we're talking 11 months of rejection. And I was so disappointed. She said, wait till the first of the year and before you make any decisions. And a couple of weeks later, she emailed me and said, I love this book. I would love to offer you a book deal. And so we talked about it. And then she said, I we can't negotiate a book deal because I didn't have an agent. And
Mm.
so she was like, okay, so you need to go get an agent. And I thought, oh yeah, that's right. Because I am supposed to, this is, oh wow, a book deal first and then an agent. It was that's not the
It's the
process.
other
That's
way.
not the
Right.
way, the other way around. And so then let me tell you, if you want agents to immediately hop in that inbox,
Of course.
have,
Yes. I have the deal. I've done the majority of the work already.
right, right. I
You
mean, let
just
me
come
tell
in and
you,
now get your percentage.
that's right. That inbox was on fire. Okay. Those 3 days after the inbox was on fire. 11 months of like practically, silence. And
Yes.
then, oh, we was on fire then. And so it made me very meticulous on who I
Yes.
selected as an agent, because are you just doing this because the deal is done, or do
Yes.
you really want to represent me? So I asked Aaron, my editor then, I said, you know of any agents that you want to work with, who maybe I didn't submit before? Because I had sent 73
Mm.
query letters. And so I was like, I am nearing the end of who I want to work with. And there was an agent, her name was Abby Saul, who was close to submissions, close to queries whenever I first started pitching her. So I never pitched her. And we hit it off immediately, just immediately. And then I had all these other offers from these other ones, but she was the first person I talked to, the first person that I loved. And so she's my agent today. And then after that, I signed a 2-book deal with Source Books.
That
And
is
then
an amazing story.
and then since then, I signed another 2-book deal with Source Books, which is where Wildflowers and my 4th book are printed under.
That is such an amazing story. I mean, it's so amazing. I don't think I would have picked anybody an agent that, I wouldn't
No,
have. You did the
it
right
wasn't.
thing. I would
Yeah.
not have.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I know an agent is more about the book deal,
Yeah.
but I mean,
The
do
book
you
deal was
really want to
done.
represent me, or do
Yeah.
you just want this, this little money on the end? So yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. That is amazing. Totally amazing. So, this story you said, what was the theme for book two? Because I have forgiveness and grief, and I still have to read book two.
yes. Letting go.
Oh,
Letting go was letting go. All these characters are holding on to these secrets that
okay.
they just need to let go of.
Okay. I love this. Oh my gosh, it's so great. Okay, so
Thank you.
let's get back to Where the Wildflowers Grow.
Okay.
The story explores, survival, what it means to truly start living, found family. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So with this book, I knew that it was not going to be a race to the end, that it was that Lee's story was going to unfold over
Mm-hmm.
parts. And so I thought, what are some things that I can add to this story to kind of help the reader kind of fall in with the language? And it started with, once I had the character, it started with the whole idea of the setting of this book, that is on G's Bend and that it was on a flower farm. And I thought, how can I, since this is a character-driven book, how can this location also serve as a character? And so the flower farm,
Totally. Totally. It's one of my questions. Yes,
the
totally.
flower farm is a secondary character, but it's also a very much a metaphor for healing.
Mm-hmm.
Once the decision was made to set it on a flower farm, it was, how can I use flowers, as a metaphor? And it was like, okay, so you think about growing something. You think about the life of a flower. You put a seed in the ground, you put a plant in the ground, and it does not bloom overnight. It takes time. And so does healing. Healing takes time. And so I wanted the reader to kind of mirror, since they naturally mirror each other, healing and the life of a flower, that I want them to mirror each other and for the reader to see that. Then the found family was important to me because I believe in balance in my books. I believe that if you have these two villain men characters, Deacon Ridley and her father, that I
Mm.
needed to balance that out in some way. And so that's where Luke and Tib came in at, was the balance to the two villains in her story. She did not have a family, so I replaced her family. So I do a
Mm-hmm.
balance in that. Plus, I love the found family trope. It's one of my favorite tropes. I love that. I just love when people meet each other and they have this shared connection, and I love that. And so that also helped provide some of the lighter moments in the book, because it could get heavy for a lot of people. She was
Mm-hmm.
dealing with a lot of grief and going through a lot of things. And so I thought this found family was not only going to help her, but also kind of provide those lighter moments in the book.
And so let's talk about this found. I like the found family too, because the family we're born into, that's we have no choice in that, right?
That's
But
right.
the
That's right.
found family, we can curate that the way that we want it to be.
That's right.
And I think that's why it's so special to so many people. And then reading about it, I'm drawn to that as well.
Yeah.
Because there's so many special people in your life, and they are like family. It's
That's
just
right.
they are family, not like
That's
family.
right.
So
That's
let's
right.
talk a little bit about that trope, because you love that trope.
Yes, I
Um,
do.
and how you build that world, because you could feel it.
Yes. Well, I knew once I had the idea of the found family, I was like, how else can I use them? Everything, if there's a word for this book, is intentional. Everything was
Mm.
intentional. I wanted everything that you see and read about to serve multiple purposes. And so the guys served as the lighter moments in the book, but also they helped her on her healing journey. I didn't want just Jackson to be the one that was helping her. I wanted, because community heals. And I
Hmm.
wanted that whole idea and essence of community. We are not healed from one person. We are healed from multiple things. And so
Hmm.
that's where the guys came in at, and the found family. And it was, once the decision was to place this book in the middle of rural Alabama, it was
Yeah.
like, okay, how would she heal in rural Alabama? Because in a perfect world, she would go lay and sit on somebody's couch. But we're in the middle of nowhere. So I thought nature as methods of healing. We've always used nature for healing. And so
Right.
I thought, how about these men? The shared connection that they were going to have was not just that they were working on the farm together, but that they had been working on healing themselves from their own particular traumas. And I
Hmm.
think that is what really helped cement the whole idea of found family, is that she could see herself in them, and they can see themselves in her. And I think that was what really brought the connection, to the forefront.
Yeah. Because Jackson is the farm's owner.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
He was
And
the
so,
owner.
how did you land in rural Alabama?
Because I am married to a Jackson. My husband is a country boy, through an Alabama country boy through and through.
Okay.
And he's like, when are you going to write? I primarily specialize in Southern fiction. And so he's like, when are you going to write a book, set in Alabama, which is where I live? And
Uh-huh.
so I was like, okay, so baby, I need a book where an escaped convicted felon can realistically hide out for 9 months and unpack and address her trauma. Go. And he immediately said G's Bend, because this man knows the state very well. And
Hmm.
he said G's Bend. Now, I've heard of G's Bend. I knew about the quilts. I
Never
knew the
heard of it.
history of it, but I had never been there. And so my sister-in-law, God bless her, she's the one that I drag on these research trips and stuff. I was like, we are going to G's Bend. We're going to go scout this out. But it's 6 hours from about where I live. And
Uh-huh.
so we make the hotel reservations. And at the bottom of the hotel reservation, it says print your directions because your data, your phone will not work out here or may not work out here. And I was
Okay.
like, yes. And my sister was like, no. She's like, wait. You're talking about going someplace where our
Right,
phones won't
right.
work. And so we go there. And it's just a beautiful place, the history of it. And I always invite people who have read this book, please look up the history of Gee's Bend. Please look up the history of these quilts because this is a real area and a real place. And I just go there and I go during the airing of the Quilts Festival that I
Hmm.
mentioned in the book. And it's such a beautiful, and Quilts was all out. And we start driving. The main road is paved, but then there's all these like dirt roads. And so we just turned down the dirt road and we're driving. And my sister-in-law was like, where are we going, Tara? Because our phones will not
Don't
work.
work.
If
Yeah.
something happens, our phones will not work. And I was like, I am waiting for that inspiration to hit me. I was doing one of those writing inspiration to hit me. And it did. Like a couple of minutes later, we come up on this field and like the sun is coming down, beaming down. And it was like, okay, this is it. This is where she's going to heal, right here in the middle of this field. And I left there thinking that it was going to be a farm. I said, okay, she's going to heal on a farm right here. And then I go to a library conference and I am seated next to a flower farmer. And this is what I mean by my stories find me and come to me. I don't go to
Yes.
them. And because I knew the farm and she's showing me pictures of her flower farm. And I'm like, do I know that flowers were grown on such massive farms? Like I knew flowers came from somewhere.
Somewhere, right.
But like she's showing me like a flower farm exists. And so I like completely like kidnapped this woman through a whole dinner and just like talking to her because I'm like, I'm a librarian by trade. So I do a lot of research. I ask a ton of questions.
Hmm.
I was like, how does that run? How does that work? I was like asking all these questions. And so she kind of helped me arrive at the idea that this book was going to be on a flower farm. And so then that's when I got the idea of, okay, so a flower farm, multiple meanings here, like multiple
Yes,
meanings. So then that's
multiple.
where the metaphors and stuff came in at. And so that's how I ended up at a fictional flower farm in rural Alabama, mostly because of my husband, but also because I sat next to a flower farmer at a library conference.
Wow. This is,
Yeah.
I love how it's unfolding. And so, what are the, without giving anything away, I don't think it's giving anything away if you talk about the metaphors in the book as it relates to the flower farm, because I think that's an important part of the
Yeah.
development of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to give people permission to rest. And I thought
Mm.
the biggest, way of doing that is the slow journey of the life of a flower, which is why the book is set over the seasons, why I emphasize the fall, the winter, the spring, because by the spring, she is a new person, but
Hmm.
the fall is the shedding of layers, right? The shedding of the leaves. Everything is starting to pack down for the winter. The winter is the hardest moment, the hardest part of any season. That's when you really do a lot of growing, but it's silent growing.
Hmm.
It's in the ground. It's cold time, and then the spring. And so I want to give people, permission to rest throughout this book. I think we as women, and we especially as Black women, feel like we have to hold everything with as many hands as the two hands that we have and the hands that we don't even have. And
Correct.
that's why I wanted this book to symbolize, growth and second chances and redemption. Because, Lee thought that she was above redemption, that she could not redeem herself. And so I want people to understand, how important those particular metaphors, but mostly just it's okay to rest.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of this book is when Jackson is explaining to her, how the dahlias work. And he said to her, she said, you just want to save me. He said, you don't need to be saved. He immediately clocked her. He was like, you don't need to be saved. And she says, well, what do I need? He said, rest. Like he immediately knew what she needs. He knew that she was a strong woman. She just needed that permission that it's okay for her not to have it all figured out all the time.
Yeah. I think we all need to hear that
Yes.
often. Yeah.
Yes. Very
Um,
often.
one of our audience members made a comment
Hmm.
that they love the diversity of the characters and how they were mostly male showing emotions.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about that because I do think that's an important part.
Yes, I am often asked, whoever asked that question or made that statement is a
Celestially
very
yours, our girl.
Hey, hey, girl. There is a very great observation because I was mindful in this book of two things: how the state of Alabama is represented. Like I said, I was not born here. I'm a Midwestern girl. My husband
Hmm.
is born and raised here. But, Alabama has such a very complicated, complex history.
Yes.
The things that people remember and know about Alabama is not all that Alabama is. And so, yes, it has its racist past and it's still very much, encompasses that. That is still very much a real thing here. But it's also a very beautiful state. There
Hmm.
are people here who love this state and it's not just its stereotype. And so I was very careful of how I represent Alabama in this book. But even more importantly, I am very careful how I represent Black men, how I
Yes.
represent
Hmm.
Black men in fiction. There's so much that they're carrying, just like Black women. We're
Hmm.
carrying so many stereotypes. And so if I have to make a villain character like Deacon Ridley, like her father, I'm going to try to balance that out in some way. And Tib and Jackson and Walt, I'm going to balance that out and show that because men are what broke Lee. And so men had to be the one that fixed her. And so
Yeah.
that's why there's more men representation, but also the emotional intelligence. Most of the time we read stories, these men are not very emotionally intelligent.
Correct. They're
And
not.
it's not a lot happening. Like this book is so character driven. So I needed them to not be perfect, but
Hmm.
just have already arrived at a place in regards to their own emotional intelligence so they can help her as well.
And that's really refreshing,
Yeah,
because all Black men are not just the same,
that's right.
devoid of feeling,
That's right.
all the things that, the world tells you that they are. So it is
That's right.
really nice to have this viewpoint because this is true.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Um, you mentioned your research. And so after you found out about the flower farm, that it's a real thing, what do you do then? You go and learn about flowers? Like, what do you do? Because I mean, you clearly know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I did. I was still writing long after we're gone when all this research started. So I was
Mm.
not done. I mean, I was still at the very end of writing long after we're gone. So the research process, the ideas and nuggets for an idea always start when I'm writing my last my last book. And so that's where the research process starts. And so then by the time the research process is done and I'm ready to write, it kind of just flows out because I've been holding it for so long. And so this process, after this, we went from the research to researching flowers because once I realized that it was about flowers, it was like,
Mhm.
how else can I use these flowers? And so once again, my husband tells me he said, oh, I have a big book of flowers. And so I was just kind of flipping through those big book of flowers and trying to find something. And he said, oh, you need to go see the Cahaba lily because I'm telling you, this man knows the state very well. And I drive, it's 3 hours north of me. Me and my sister-in-law, we go up there and we look at it. And it's this Cahaba lily. If anybody has read this book, please look up this Cahaba lily because it is a rare flower that's mostly only found in the state of Alabama. Once
Oh,
again, so this is the beautiful diversity of this state. And so this flower grows in running water. It's the only way it grows. And Dr. Davenport, who's a character in this book, but is also a real person, he's the only expert of the Cahaba lily. He told me, he's like, we have tried to dig it out of the water and plant it in soil, and it dies every time. It makes no sense why this flower needs to grow in running water. It should not be here, but it is. And I was like, when he told me that, I was like, ooh, that's going to be a metaphor for
I'm
leaves.
sitting here thinking like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was so perfect. And so those who've read the book without spoilers know that that moment comes at a very critical part of
Yeah.
the book. And so it was a very important part to put that in there. But yeah, I did a lot of research, on flowers, but for the most part, the Cahaba lily and then the dahlias, the whole process of how dahlias grow, I use those two to kind of get the point across as far as healing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And so what was the hardest part you think? Because like when you met with your uh about grief, like what was the hardest part of writing about grief? Because it's so layered
Hmm.
and there's so many different it, it's just so much. And
Yes.
it's a thing that you feel like you may have crossed the plane of it, but it comes in waves. It could be years from now. It could be, it's just an ongoing process. For me
Yeah,
personally, I think that's
it
how I
is.
feel about it.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It was hard because I've not suffered from the very specific types of grief that Lee has suffered from.
Hmm.
And so, but I am an empath. And so if I research and learn more about it, I can almost feel like it's happening to me.
Hmm.
But the hardest part was getting it right, but also understanding what this grief was. And I remember talking, Megan is the name of the grief therapist, and it was
Yeah.
like, I'm afraid that I may push the reader too far. And she said, you have to stay true to the grief. A character like Lee would not be open and honest. I was afraid that she was going to come across as being unlikable
Hmm.
because she was so closed off, because she had so much armor built up. And I was afraid that people would read this book and not have the empathy that I wanted them to have for her, but immediately go to not liking her. And she says, you have to be true to the grief. If you write it right, if you write that empathy in, they will understand who this character is and they will go with you. And so it was really important for me to get that right, which is why the book starts, and this is not a spoiler because it's literally the first chapter,
Hmm.
which is why the book starts with Lee drowning in the water, because
Yeah.
I wanted the reader to immediately have this empathy. Oh my goodness, who is this person? Why was she in prison? She's drowning. Why is she trying to save this woman? Like, I immediately wanted the reader to draw the reader in to start thinking about who this woman was and immediately feel sorry for her. And so that kind of helped me so when she gets to the farm and she's being rebellious and she doesn't want to eat the breakfast with the guys, she doesn't want to eat the dinner with the guys, she doesn't want to talk to them, they can
Yes.
understand the path that she has gone under. So that was hard, of not making her too unlikable.
Yeah, I don't know what it says about me, but I just when I read the synopsis when it said that she escaped from a prison bus and then she goes away and she's I was like, yes. I was already drawn in. I wanted to know what
Yeah,
happened, right? I
yeah,
was kind of, I don't know, I was rooting for her
yeah. And that's it.
without knowing anything. I was already rooting for her.
Yeah, that's it. And then it was hard to kind of piece together her story just enough so the reader will keep reading to say, okay, and give you just enough to kind of flesh out why she's in a situation and who she is. And it was too much or not enough. And you literally, those who have read it, know you don't find out what happens to her until like literally like the last chapter
Yeah.
of the story. I mean, so it was like, how much is too much? How little is too little? It was just a matter of trying to get that right. So that was difficult.
Okay, so she was the hardest to write, I'm gathering.
Oh my goodness. Lee was, of all my characters, she was the one that did not want to speak to me. And I was so frustrated because once I have, and long after we're done is finished, turned in, it's time for me to start writing this book that I've been living with for about a year. And the characters came. Jackson came, Walt came, Luke came. Lee did not come. And she did come, but she came in drips. And most of the time when the research is done, the characters are like really talking to you.
Hmm.
She came in like these little snatches. And I'm like, Lee, this is your story, baby. You have got to talk to me. But then I realized, oh, this is who you are. You're never going to talk to me because you don't trust me, because you are a survivor. And it's this the way she tells Jackson her story is almost the way she told me the story, in pieces, because she doesn't trust us. She doesn't know she can trust us yet. And that's the way she gave me the entire book. But once I realized that, I was like, okay, this is not going to come out in a
Hmm.
flow. It's going to come out in drips.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
You hard topics, right? Hard themes, but realistic things like real life things and characters. Um, you you get it's a survival and hope. How do you thread that in through all of the things that are going on? I
Yeah.
mean, that we're living like that now. We're trying to hang on to hope somewhere, but how do you thread that in to all the stories, to all your books?
Honestly, I like to say this. I always write an author's note in the beginning of all my books, and I always will. And I
Hmm.
always say that we bring a piece of ourselves into everything we read. If
Hmm.
I could just get it right, the reader will do the rest. I feel like the reader will start to immediately have that sense of survival, which is, again, why this book started with her drowning in the water, because you're
Yeah.
like, okay, it's not Lee surviving. It is we are surviving this. I've had readers tell me that they found themselves holding their breath
Yeah.
whenever they was reading under the water. And so as a writer, I just have to kind of get you there, and the reader will, pretty much do a lot of the rest for us.
Yeah. I love the audiobook.
Oh my goodness.
You know,
Tracy Thoms.
I'm a huge audio person, so if the audio has me going, it's like it's
Tracy,
there.
Tracy, well, let me tell you that story if we have time. Let me tell you the story of that.
You have the floor. Yes.
So me too. I am a huge audiobook. My mother,
Hmm.
my husband, we all just run through audiobooks. And so they asked me, so Source Books did not have their own audio, at the time for my first two books, but they did for this third one. And so we were a lot more involved in this process. And they asked me, do you have any requests? And I was like, I want duet narration, which, man, in contemporary fiction, they was like, my book was the first one that Source Books Audio had done in duet narration. And so they said yes. And I was like, really? Okay. They was like, okay, narrators. And so I gave them Deontay Black. Deontay Black is the man who also narrated Long After We're Gone. And so I love him. I thought he did an amazing job on Long After We're Gone. I was like, I need you to come back. Please, 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 please. He said yes. But as far as the female narrators, I was like, there's so many great
Oh,
ones. And so I submitted a list to them, and they were going to reach out to see if they were available. And they get back to me and they say, Tracy Thoms is available. And I was like, what? She is, excuse me? And they were like, yeah, she's available and she's interested. And I'm like, okay. And they were like, well, do you want to listen to an
you're like, no.
audition tape? I'm like, no. I mean, the woman can sing because I grew up a musical theater fan. She was in she was in a movie Rent. She's been in all this stuff, The Devil Wears Prada. Like, yes, I know. I know what she sounds like because I've
Yeah.
watched her stuff before. Yes, get her. And she just really embodied the raspiness of her voice. Just was so perfect for Lee. And so now I'm ruined. I'm like, Tracy, you're gonna have to
You have to do
narrate
all the rest of them.
all my stuff now because I'm completely ruined. But I mean, just a blessing
She nailed it.
she nailed it so great. She
Hmm.
did.
And I
Yeah,
think like with the setting, the storyline, I mean, just it matched.
it matched.
It matched. It really
It just
did.
it really matched because I was very meticulous on who was going to play, for Lee because she couldn't sound too sweet.
Yeah.
She couldn't sound too hard, but
Hmm.
Tracy Thoms was just it was she was perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Because you couldn't have someone like overly bubbly. It just wouldn't work. And I think
It would not
she
work.
just nailed it. Like it was
Yes.
kind of like you're listening to, if you guys in the audience, if you're audiobook lovers, listen to this in
Please.
audio. Even if you've read it, you need to listen to the audio
Please, you have to. I mean,
for sure.
she performed this. Like this is my book, and I am tearing up. Like when her voice would crack and she would like cry. I was
Hmm.
like, oh my goodness, she performed this,
She
and they
really
won
did.
for Kirkus, and you know Kirkus. They gave them an earphone award. So for the audio, so that is they don't Kirkus don't
Huge.
they're very tough people to please, and
Yes.
they won an earphone awards for that, and I was so happy because this was the first book that Tracy Thoms ever narrated. This was her first one, so they won that
Oh, I
award.
didn't know that.
Yes, this was her first
Oh, so
one.
she's going to be in high demand now. It's going to be after.
She
Oh,
can't
yeah.
forget. She can't forget me though.
She
I
can't
hope she doesn't
forget.
forget.
No, yo, she cannot forget.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So, what do you hope readers take away from Lee's story?
Two things. So I kind of hit one of them in the author's note.
Hmm.
It's really dedicated to survivors. I think we underestimate the number of people who are trying to make it through life, the
Yeah.
number of people who have been through something. And it's dedicated to survivors, to like that permission that you are more than what you have survived. You are more than what you have gone through. And that redemption and second chances is possible no matter what. That's the biggest takeaway for people who are these survivors who are living very quiet lives among us. The other part is surviving versus living. Are you surviving your life or are you living your
Yes.
life? My goodness, the responses this question has sparked in people. And it's a question that I asked myself when my stepson was like 4. I got my husband out the door, and I was trying to get to work, and I was taking my son to school, and he was late. We were running late, of course. And he stops and he looks up at the sky and he says, "Oh, look, a cloud." And I'm like, "Jordan, we don't have time for this. Come on, let's go, let's go."
Yeah.
He's like, "No, look." And I look up and it's this beautiful cloud. But I realized, when was the last time I looked up? I realized I hadn't looked at clouds. I hadn't looked up in so long. And I go home and that evening I tell my husband, I was like, "I saw a cloud today." And my husband was like, "Okay." And I was like, "No, I saw a cloud today." Like, it was a big deal for me because I hadn't stopped to look at that. And so
Hmm.
that's what I want people to ask themselves. Unfortunately for Lee, she asked herself this question at the bottom of this ravine when she realizes that, she's not lived a life. She's only lived a
Hmm.
life of survival. And it shouldn't take a traumatic event in order for you to realize that about
Yeah.
your life. Are you living your life, or are you surviving it? Do you have your head tucked down and you're just kind of wading your way through life? Or are
Yeah.
you active? Are you paying attention? Are you present? Because kids are the most present individuals. They notice everything. But as
Everything.
adults, we don't, because we're so distracted. We're in our head. And so I want people to ask themselves the question of, are you surviving your life, or are you living it?
Okay, I got to put that in my caption. It's gonna take me a
Sorry.
minute before I post this one because I took so many notes.
Sorry.
No, don't. This is so good.
Thank you.
It's so good. It's so refreshing. I think for me, it's even more. It's about just, I don't know. It's speaking to me some kind of way,
Yeah.
other than just being about the book. And so
Yeah.
I always believe in divine order, and so this to me, I needed
Thank
this
you.
today for sure. Um, so I want to know two things.
Yes.
What are you? Wait a minute. Before I go there, I this one in particular, not so much. I mean, I'm not gonna say not so much because I haven't read the second book, and I've saw people say this, that they feel like these could be series, on TV.
Yes.
And I felt that when I was reading this.
Oh,
Um,
man. Yeah.
totally.
I would love
Oh,
that.
yeah, totally. So we're speaking that into existence. So for
I have
sure.
an amazing film agent. Me and S.A. Cosby have the same film agent, and we know that she has been working for him. We have the
Working.
exact same film agent. She doesn't take on a lot of people, but
Hmm.
she's my second book is optioned. Long After We're Gone is optioned, and she's working on this one. So people out there, let's say some prayers that something happens with it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so
Mhm.
talk about being option for the second book. If you, I mean, what does it feel like?
It feels great, but I know the state of Hollywood. I
Hmm.
know right now it's extremely difficult to get things made. And it's, to me, honestly, when I write my books, I don't write my books to
Yeah.
with the hope that they'll ever anything more than just books on the shelf.
Hmm.
But I mean, it was an amazing experience to go through that because there was multiple interest, and just for people to get that book the way that they got it, it is I think it's one of my favorites that I've written, but it's also my underrated one that people, you just have to understand these characters. They're not the most likable characters,
Yeah. Hmm.
but for people to see, that, oh, they will play very well on TV. I was very moved by that and very honored for that because, yeah, that was a fantastic experience. And if nothing ever happens with it, I am perfectly fine with it. Just to be able to say that it was optioned.
I just love your story so much. I mean, just from your debut and then all the things that are unfolding, it's incredible.
Yes.
Um, so you told us that you finished the fourth book
Yes.
coming fall of 27.
All 27.
Any gems you can share without giving anything away, or you can't say anything?
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Okay.
So, I never thought that I would circle back to write about the same characters that I've written about. But One Summer in Savannah is just, man, when I tell you, I mean, even when I'm on the road for Wildflowers, they'll ask me no questions, and people are like, "Can I ask you a question about One Summer in Savannah?" So I figured we was not done with that. My editor agreed. So this book, it does not have a title yet.
Okay.
I am calling it. Another Summer in Savannah. They're going to change it because they change all of my titles, but I'm calling it Another Summer in Savannah. And this time it's a standalone. So you will not have had to read One Summer in Savannah, but it is Alana's story. Alana is the eight-year-old girl in that book, in One Summer in Savannah. But this is her story. This is her in two timelines as an 18-year-old girl, but also as a 25-year-old woman. And you find out, she finds out in the 18-year-old timeline about her conception.
Oh my
And the,
goodness.
the entire theme of this book is the theme of this book, because I have to have my themes first. The theme of this book is identity. When you lost yourself, when you think that your life was going to end up one way and something happens and your identity is lost. So she is having to find out who she really is.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah. I was really excited to go back into this world. I was.
Oh, readers are gonna lose it. And I
They're, they're
you
gonna lose
said
it.
it on here so I can put it in a little part of my caption, what's
Yeah,
coming.
absolutely.
Okay, we don't have a title. Okay. That's amazing and
Yes.
exciting.
Yes. I'm excited
Wow.
about it.
Okay. Well, we got that. And so before I let you go, I want to know what you're reading or what have you read that you've absolutely loved.
I am reading, where is it? Oh, I am blurring a book, Writer in Residence by Rhonda McKnight.
Okay.
Comes out in
Yes.
September. I love this woman. Rhonda McKnight she is just such a beautiful, beautiful soul. This
Mhm.
is such a great. I love her books. If y'all have not read her books, A Thing Called Home, Bittersweet, and this one is Writer in Residence. It is about a writer who has, ironically has lost her voice, and she takes his residency in order to try to get that back. Her writing is blocked, and she takes his residency to help her find out who she is. And there's history in here. There's so much in this book. I'm halfway finished with it because I need to have this blurb turned into her like in the next week. But I love Rhonda's book. So this is
Okay.
this is what I'm reading right
Awesome.
now. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I said that was the last question, but I have one more because you said it and it just triggered a memory. You said they always change your titles.
Yes.
And so can we talk about the process? Like your covers, like I said, they're gorgeous. And
Yeah.
so how do you come up with the titles?
Oh, source books, what they do something really amazing. They market test the titles and the covers. And so what we do is we work on a synopsis, what the book is about, and then we submit a list of me, my agent, my editor, submit a list of potential titles. And they market test. I guess people in the room, people decide which one of these titles best matches the description. So once we have that, then they do the covers the same way. They have these designers kind of work on mock-ups of it. And I've been very blessed. Sandra Chow is my cover designer. She's also the cover designer for all of Emily Henry's books.
Oh,
So
okay. Oh, okay.
if you see the colors, it makes sense when I tell people that because they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, she loves color. Even in
Yeah.
Emily Henry's books, she loves color. So she's responsible for that beautiful cover of Where the Wildflowers Grow. Just so beautiful. But the interesting story about that cover is originally there was two that we were up against. It was one without Lee on it,
Hmm.
and then there was one with Lee going up and down. And this is the one I wanted. I wanted a black woman on the cover of this
Of
book. This is her
course.
story. I wanted her on the
Hmm.
cover of this book, but it did not test well. The other one tested well. And we were like, what happened? No, 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 no. And the feedback in house was because Lee is laying in the grass and her eyes are closed. And the feedback was she looked like she's dead. And it was like, oh, yeah, okay. So this is why I think it's important to test these things because as readers, we do buy books based on covers. We do have opinions.
Yeah.
And so somebody somewhere was like, this book, she looked like she's dead. So that's where the decision was made to turn her the other way and put a flower in her hand.
Hmm.
And that one tested extremely well. So
Because she looks like she's resting.
because she looks like she's resting now and not just like she's dead. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing. I cannot thank you enough for
Thank
joining us.
you.
I'm so happy that you said yes to me when I
Of
slid into your DM, but I thank you so much. This
Thank
was the
you.
perfect book for our April springtime
Yeah,
read. It was a delight. And so
thank
I
you.
can't wait wait for what's next. We will be around, Lord
Yes.
willing, to celebrate and all the things. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey,
Bye
take care.
bye.
Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.